Franco-German motor has spluttered along through many a crisis in recent years, but if one issue was ever a permanent wedge between Paris and Berlin, it was defence. Then, on February the 24th, Russia invaded Ukraine, strengthening attitudes in Paris and drastically changing them in Berlin. But even in the days before the invasion, there were signs of change.
If we consider the diplomatic efforts of Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron to send the same message to Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin, that were ultimately not fruitful, but I think they showed that there is deep coordination going on in a field that has been troubled in the past for Europeans, namely defense and security cooperation.
Since the invasion, France has been sending largely undisclosed military equipment to Ukraine and speeding up its deployment of troops to bolster NATO's eastern flank. Meanwhile, in Berlin, amid growing protests, Germany's new government ripped up the rule book.
As you know, we decided yesterday that Germany will supply Ukraine with weapons to defend the country. We will invest more than 2% of the annual GDP on our defence from now on. The 2022 federal budget will endow this special fund with 100 billion euros on a one-off basis.
Part of that money has already been earmarked to buy 35 US F-35 fighter jets.
Efforts by France and Germany to ramp up defense have certainly been welcomed, but many are still asking, what exactly does that mean for European defense?
In the short term, the focus will be strengthening NATO's eastern flank, says German Social Democrat Niels Schmidt. But he says EU defence capabilities should also be stepped up with a so-called strategic compass.
Now it's a question of developing our own armament technology in Europe, building up our own capabilities and developing resilience. For example, being able to take action against non-military threats, disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks.
But in the long term, developing a joint European defence policy, not to mention any kind of European army, is unlikely to be plain sailing. Deciding what kind of role such an army would play or what the plan of action would look like would be no easy feat.
If the French mission in Libya had been a European mission, for example, Germany would have had to participate. And that would have been very difficult from a German point of view. So it must somehow be possible to vote democratically. This is a very difficult challenge to overcome.
But for now, despite all eyes being on Ukraine, Germany is still closely watching the French presidential election.
The hope here in Berlin is for a re-election of Macron and the continuation of the groundwork that's been laid with the new German Chancellor.